In 2019, YouTube was caught violating the Child Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPPA. Since settling, YouTube has enacted new policies that are meant to serve as a smokescreen so they can dodge responsibility and scapegoat creators. As such, for my own protection, it is my obligation to advise you that this video is not aimed at children. My target audience is not children. Parental discretion is advised. Hey guys, how's everyone doing? This is Sir Jedi Sentinel watching over Geekdom, and welcome back to Sentinel Reviews. Today, and we're relatively on time for once, because the last time I did these, I did them both like a year apart, but anyway, long story short, we are reviewing Missy Series 3, Missy and the Monk, released in September of 2021, directed by Ken Bentley. Missy and the Monk stars Michelle Gomez as Missy, Rufus Hound as the meddling monk, and Gemma Whelan as the meddling nun. As always, because I do these unscripted, I am putting a blanket spoiler warning in place just in case I decide to talk about spoilers for the set. Also, spoilers for Missy Series 2, as, you know, the end of Missy Series 2 kind of sets the stage for Missy Series 3. Also, spoilers for Dalek Universe 1. Anyway, so I think that's everything out of the way. Without further ado, let's just get started. Missy Series 3, it slightly changes the format. We're going from a 4-story box set to a 3-story set. The stories in this set are Body and Soulless by James Goss, Warseed by Johnny Candon, and Two Monks, One Mistress by James Kettle. So, let me set you up where we are right now in this series. At the end of Missy Series 2, in the final story, Too Many Masters, this is going to be a little lengthy, the monk put a genetic lock on his TARDIS. I forget what the actual technobabble name was, but so I'm just calling it a genetic lock, so that his TARDIS would only operate under his control. However, he did not put a genetic lock on the genetic lock. So Missy was able to put her genetic data into that lock, which means they both needed to operate the lock so the monk could operate his TARDIS. So where Missy Series 2 ended and where Missy Series 3 starts, Missy has basically taken the monk hostage. And that's sort of what they're doing throughout this story. The monk is at Missy's mercy, or lack thereof. And that's where Body and Soulless starts. You see, Missy decided that yes, she needs the monk to pilot his TARDIS, but she doesn't need all of him. This is not spoilers, by the way. This is in the plot description. So the monk spends this entire story as a disembodied brain. And not even a brain in a jar. Missy doesn't respect him that much. In another nod to the Mary Poppins jokes everyone makes with Missy, she's keeping the monk in a carpet bag. And Missy and the monk find themselves on a planet that's sort of been torn apart by war between two races. A humanoid race called the Calderans, and the Vad, a disembodied consciousness. Over the course of the story, Missy and the monk become separated, and the monk, as a disembodied brain, is recruited to help the Vad. So, and it's really interesting here because, it kind of shows, where on the spectrum Missy and the monk are. They're on opposite ends of the spectrum. They're both agents of chaos, but the monk is chaotic neutral. Missy is chaotic evil. And it's really interesting because, like I said, once the monk gets kidnapped by the Vad, they're pitted against each other. Like, every time Missy makes a play on the battlefield, the monk is able to counter her, and vice versa. It really shows the way the two characters think. Also, for the first half of the story, once again, Michelle Gomez and Rufus Hound just have phenomenal chemistry. They play off each other really well. That's all I'm going to say right now. I'll save my thoughts, as always, when I do box sets. At the end, when I do the overview, I'll discuss my thoughts on the performances of the leads there. And this story is just hysterical. Like, for the first first 12 minutes, I was just laughing nonstop. The jokes, and the jokes hit, and they spend the right amount of time. It's like you could have jokes going a mile a minute, where they go too fast that you don't get a chance to process them. Oh, but this story times them really well. They set it up, they hit the punchline, and then they let the joke linger for just the right amount of time before moving on to the next one. Also, there is something I want to talk about with the Missy series that I don't think I've mentioned when I reviewed series 1 or series 2. This series still does treat Missy like the master, as I have said in the past, but even though Missy, the series, is more farcical, more comedic in nature, there's still these really dark undertones to the stories at play. Like, the example I always go to is The Belly of the Beast from Series 1. It's the weakest story of Series 1, but when you look at it in context as a master story, when you realize what Missy is doing and how she's going about doing it, it's actually a really twisted, really messed up story. And like I said, Missy, the series as a whole, and as well as this set, Missy and the Monk, never forgets that. So you are still laughing, you're still having fun, you're having a riot with these characters and these stories, but there's always that dark undercurrent to everything going on. And, kind of like here in Body and Soulless. Like I said, Missy extracted the monk's brain from his body. And she's also playing a long game here. A game she started before this story even began. There's not too much I want to say anymore on that, just because reviewing comedy, I find, is really, really hard. Because basically it boils down to, that's funny, or that's not funny, And then, if it's funny, you have to explain why, and let's be honest, no one likes having a joke, even a good one, explained to them. So, yeah, Body and Soulless is a great start to the series. And then we move on to Warseed by a new writer for Big Finish, Johnny Camden. This story sees Missy and the Monk arrive on Earth, with Missy making claims that she's going to save it. But, of course, it's Missy, so we know there are, oh, shoot, I just forgot the phrase. She has alternative ideas in mind. What surprises Missy and the Monk, though, is that humans have seemed to somehow obtain the ability of regeneration. Not true regeneration, they glow and everything, but they don't change physical appearance or persona or anything. They just seem kind of rejuvenated, but they're still regenerating. So, of course, they split up to figure out what's going on. And their investigations lead them to a conglomerate, a mega corporation. And the man in charge, his name I am now forgetting. But basically, what happened is he has a hostage who is capable of a form of regeneration. And he is taking that energy and putting it in his products. Candies, creams, beauty products, shampoos, lotions, etc. So, what is going on here? Well, this person being held hostage is Missy's son. Son. He is a Warseed, the title. And basically, he was a weapon created during the Time War. Missy calls it her finest work. And what a Warseed is supposed to do, they go to planets, civilizations, with an extreme penchant for violence. And, they sort of seed themselves into the society. They exert their influence, slowly infecting the race of the planet, whatever planet they're on. And when they've reached their peak, when they reach the pinnacle of their violent nature, they turn into living weapons called the Cheetle. And of course, Missy being Missy, decides to try and partner up with this greedy CEO. I wish I remembered his name, that would make this so much easier. And, promising to give him an army of the Cheetle. After she shows him a planet of what a previous planet to what the Cheetle, where the Cheetle came from and what they did to it. There we go, that's how you say that. And that's all that happens in this story. Once again, I will say the comedy kind of initially helps hide that dark undercurrent of Missy's motivations and actions, but not a lot happens in this story. And I ultimately just find it kind of dull. Like, because a huge chunk of this story in the middle is just an exposition dump, explaining what the War Seed is, explaining what the Cheetle are, and like what they did to the planets they came from and what they did in the Time War. Also, the monk's role is really reduced in this. He's very sidelined, and I hesitate to say he... Well, I'll wait till that. I'll get to that in a minute. I'll save that for the overview, actually. But no, his role is really reduced in this story. Like, he's purely a reactionary. You know, as Missy and the War Seed are explaining what they did during the Time War and what the intention was, he only pipes in pretty much to say how monstrous that was. You know, he doesn't really have any kind of substance in this story. Ultimately, after how great Body and Soulless was, this story is kind of a letdown. Thankfully, this it's the only letdown really in this set, because the finale is something spectacular. 2 monks, 1 mistress. And once again, like the Ninth Doctor adventures, Respond to All Calls, we kind of go all over the spectrum in this set. You know, with Body and Soulless, we were on an alien planet. With War Seed, we were on contemporary Earth. And now with 2 monks, 1 mistress, the finale of Missy Series 3, we are going to Earth's past, this time Renaissance Italy, where, you know, to pull off her latest scheme, Missy puts herself into the graces of Alfredo Borgia. And I actually have to pause here, because right after I heard that opening, and I was like, why hasn't Doctor Who ever done the Borgias before? Like, I'm sure a lot of it is more fiction than fact, what we know about the Borgias. As of right now, like I said, more fiction than fact. One of the most corrupt and notorious papacies in history. But I think it would be really interesting and really cool to see Doctor Who proper, not just a spinoff, do the Borgias in some way. Anyway, Missy's plan here is that her and the monk are going to hijack an alien crime lord disguised as a duke and steal his cache of plutonium. But that's just what she's telling the monk. Really, Missy is working with someone else. Someone who took out this crime lord and is posing as his servant and has the plutonium. None other than the meddling nun. And here's where that spoiler for Dalek Universe 1 comes in. So, you know, during lockdown, with David Tennant available, they decided to do an epic adventure, an epic starring the 10th Doctor. Similar in vein to the epics they did with the 8th Doctor, you know, Dark Eyes, Doom Coalition, Ravenous. This epic is called Dalek Universe, and I'm not going to go too far into it, but basically, in Dalek Universe 1, Gemma Whelan was introduced as a new incarnation of the meddling monk. Which, of course, you know, she hates it, but Missy calls her, and she's credited in this set as the meddling nun. And I have to say, Gemma Whelan might be my favorite incarnation of the monk. It's a really close call. Like, because, you know, before this, I've said in one video, my favorite incarnation of the monk was Graham Garden. Now, I think she's tied with Graham Garden, but I think she might just be edging him out. Like, she might, like I said, she might be my favorite incarnation of the monk. And, oh, she's just so glorious in this role. You know, she's absolutely unhinged in a way I think even Rufus Hound isn't. And he is pretty unhinged, don't get me wrong. And, you know, one of my friends said she basically combines sort of that calculative, more plotting essence of Peter Butterworth with the more Joker-like, poor comparison, I think, glee of Rufus Hound. You need to get Dalek Universe 1 or Missy Series 3 to experience Gemma Whelan. She is absolutely delightful. Anyway, back to the story. So, the short version is, Two Monks, One Mistress is a caper comedy. Basically where there's obviously something everybody wants. Like I said, there's this cache of plutonium. The nun, which I'm just going to call to differentiate her from the monk. The nun has found the coordinates to Missy's master TARDIS, a plotline that started in series 1 and sort of has been peppered throughout the rest of the series. And also, Missy has a psychic scroll, which acts similarly to the psychic paper. And basically, it's everybody trying to outdo and outsmart and outmaneuver everyone else to get what they want in the end. Double crossing everyone. I love caper comedies. When they're handled well, they are so creative and fun. I like Ocean's 11. Ruthless People is absolutely hysterical. And, similarly, Two Monks and One Mistress is amazing. Gemma Whelan has both amazing chemistry with Michelle Gomez and Rufus Hound. I actually, once again, do think Rufus Hound kind of gets sidelined here. Not as bad as he was in Warseed, but still, he doesn't get a lot of material to work with. And I also think he's a little too bumbling here. Like, the monk is not a moron. He's not an idiot. He's, despite being sort of unhinged, as I said, and very fun-loving, that's the thing, he is still very smart. He calculates his plans. And here he can't even recognize that Gemma Whelan is an incarnation of his. And it kind of acts like he doesn't even know what psychic paper is. Like, this story makes him really bumbling. But Hound's performance and charisma, I do think, make up for that. And like I said, without giving away too much of the twists or the comedy, that's all I can really say about it. Two Monks, One Mistress is the obvious highlight of this set. Missy Series 3, Missy and the Monk, I do think is a bit of a step down from previous Missy sets. And despite how that sounds, don't take that as a negative, because it's still really good. Like, I would say Missy Series 1 is a perfect 10. Missy Series 2 is a 9 out of 10. And Missy Series 3 is an 8 out of 10. So it's still really good, despite being the weakest release in the range so far. The story ranking, I would say, is Warseed is the weakest, followed by Body and Soulless, and then just the sheer madcap insanity of Two Monks, One Mistress just makes this story way too delightful. The performances are all solid. Gemma Whelan is great, which I just talked about. Rufus Hound is really good, despite kind of being pushed to the side in those later two stories. And Michelle Gomez is really great, but there is kind of a nitpick I have to make. And because one of the things I like about the expanded universe is that they treat Missy like the Master. Which, that was always my problem with Missy on TV. I love Michelle Gomez. Her performance is the best part of her TV stories, but Moffat did not treat her like the Master. He did not respect her as an incarnation of the Master. And again, like I said, the expanded universe does that. They still write Missy with this madcap insanity she had on TV, but they actually treat her and have her act more like the Master. That being said, I think Missy Series 3 is the closest she's been written to in her, as her TV persona, as a sort of opposed to this more sinister persona she has in the expanded universe. And I say this as a nitpick because, like on TV, Michelle Gomez's incredible performance is more than enough to save the role. But yeah, she's written very close to how she was written on TV. And it's just, given that, like I said, I wasn't a fan of her material on TV, it is very noticeable. But like I said, despite those flaws, if you get Missy and the Monk, you are in for a good time. And I do still recommend this. The Missy series has not had a dud yet. Granted, it's only been 3 series, but it is what it is. And I think that's all I have to say on the subject. So, join me at the end of the month, because, with what else I've been doing, my Countermeasures Series 4 review will go up on September 30th. And But otherwise, have you heard Missy and the Monk? What are your thoughts? Please start a conversation in the comments below. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. Click the bell next to subscribe to get notifications when I upload. And in the description box below, you'll find the link to my Twitter where you can follow me and you'll find the link to my Twitter where you can follow me and get updates on my channel. This is Sir Jedi Sentinel, and I'll see you guys next time.